You know who you are?
Steven is my name.
Even Steven.
Will you say something, Stephen?
Stephen Orhouse Media.
X-Men, welcome Kitty Pryde.
I'm sorry. I guess I phased through the computer.
She has the power to walk through solid objects, a power known as phasing.
Kate! It is good, little one. Colossus like rain.
Hello and welcome to the Comic Book Super Show. I'm a host. My name is Steven, and 1,000 miles over there to my right is another host, Mr. Ed Moore.
Howdy.
Now, full disclosure, Ed's not actually with me today as I record this here trailer. Instead, I stole his voice from an episode of the Superman Super Show, and I didn't tell him. I'm sure he'll be cool with it though, right? Right?
Coolness, man.
Anyway, I'm here today to tell you what you can expect from this here brand spanking new podcast. Basically, beginning Monday, January the 26th, myself, along with our other host, Ed Moore.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, we're going to be talking about comics. But more than that, we're going to be talking about our favorite comics. But more than that, we're going to talk about our favorite comics one issue at a time and one story arc at a time. For example, first up is Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, the 6-issue miniseries for Marvel Comics that was published in 1984. That's season 1. 6 issues, 6 episodes, 1 season. Beyond that, each season we're going to pick another storyline and talk about that one issue at a time. That's it, folks. It's just that simple. But hold on now, before you go, Ed and I wanted to give you a bit of the first episode to listen to right here, right now, so that you can have an idea what the show's all about. And because our first episode is such a long one, here's 30 minutes or so from episode 1. Today we're going to look at Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, issue number 1 for Marvel Comics. This issue sports a cover date of November 1984, though it hit the stands in August. It sold for just 75 cents, and it is entitled Lies. Now, I find that interesting, because, I mentioned that Kitty Pryde and Wolverine was a 6-issue mini published by Marvel Comics in 1984. If you're looking at only the cover date, you would say 84, 85. But as far as when it hit stands, August through December of 84 is when it was released. It was written by Chris Claremont with art by Al Milgrom. The letters were by Tom Orzechowski. The colorist was Glynis Wein, and here's what happened in the story. Kitty Pryde has left the X-Men and traveled to Chicago in order to recover from her breakup with Colossus. She visits her father at his bank, where she learns that he is in trouble with some Japanese businessmen who seem to be criminals and who want Carmen Pryde to meet their boss, Shigematsu, in Tokyo. Kitty stows away on a plane to Japan. However, things quickly go wrong, and she finds herself without money, wanted by the police, and with an impending case of the flu. Just when she is about to confront her father, she gets proof that he intends to allow the criminals to use his bank to launder their money. Ed, what'd you think of this one?
Now, I enjoyed it because of the approaching making me feel now the way I felt when I first read it. When I first read it, this was the absolute shit.
That's good. That's the good shit, not bad shit.
No, yeah, this like it was the I don't know what the kids say nowadays for that, but a couple things came to mind to describe for me where I was when this first came out, and I read it first run, picked it up off my spinner rack at my Kroger. Which is a local grocery store chain here in this whole part of the country, I think. Okay. The great podcaster, Irredeemable Shag, has said, and I don't know if it's him or if he's taken it from somebody, but every comic reader's golden age is 12 years old. When they're 12 years old, that is what they will remember as their golden age.
Oh, wow.
Now, think about that. Now,
I was 84, I was 12 years old.
Okay. Now, I was 12 in 1980. Okay. So if we want to stretch it out and say my golden age was the 10 years of the 80s, that's 12 to 22. So that's middle school, getting into high school where you're getting some freedom, the first couple years of college where you can absolutely, even without reason, do whatever the hell you want because there's nobody watching you, there's nobody saying no, there's no, So that's the time frame. So the 1980s, particularly for Marvel Comics, was absolutely my golden age. And here, let me throw some things out. Power Pack, the comic book, started in 1984 when this came out. The West Coast Avengers miniseries first came out.
Yeah.
Now the cool thing about that was during an Avengers storyline called Vision Quest, whereby, for those of you that don't know, Vision took over every computer system in the world.
Yes,
as a good guy, and that leads directly into the creation and why the Avengers West Coast started for the mini, and then it changed a little bit when they decided to keep it as an ongoing a couple months later and start running.
Let me just break in here real quick because one of the things that's right in my golden age, and I read West Coast Avengers, and I distinctly remember both Hawkeye and Mockingbird changing up their costumes.
Yes.
So they had short sleeves because it was so hot in LA.
Yep. But yet Iron Man was still there in that iron. So it had to be air conditioned because
definitely.
He had come over from the East Coast and now he was hanging around Malibu, I think is actually where the compound was.
Yeah.
Couple other things. The first Secret Wars came out in 1984.
Yep.
The X-Men Magic miniseries came out in 94. Killer, Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, and Magic. Those set up things and use things that we still see today for these characters, that come up. The Thing had his own comic book at the time. It was about halfway through the run. John Byrne Alpha Flight was running. The New Mutants had recently started. So the New Mutants and this period of Uncanny X-Men, of course, Alpha Flight. That was where I was. That's what I was doing. Now, this period of Uncanny X-Men, this is about the time that Rogue came in, and some other dastardly things were happening with the X-Men that we still feel today. A couple other things, books like The Micronauts, ROM, and Marvel Fanfare. Those were all still going on right now. They'd started several years earlier. So all of these books, these are absolute, to me, high points in most of the characters that appeared in this book. Arguably Secret Wars, but that was other Secret Wars. This first one was awesome. So this is, now there were other things going in the mid-'80s as far as the independents, like those books that I mentioned I'd like to talk about. But whatever. There's Dr. Strange. Hey, Dr. Strange.
Dr. Strange is in the house. For those of you listening who may have never listened to the Superman Super Show, like that podcast with the Comic Book Super Show, we record while we're live streaming. So we will have people throw up comments and whatnot. And sometimes we will just start reading and answering the comments without explaining what we're
out of
doing.
nowhere. Yeah.
And so, just
but that's why there is a prompt. Yeah, we don't just have this thing that's like, okay, throw this in now. No,
right.
Somebody
does
something in the
show
comment.
Notes. Yeah, it's like Stephen interrupts Ed to point out. Yeah.
Do I mention the comment now, or is that? Oh yeah. Oh, I was early. Sorry. Yeah. No, there's somebody commenting. So this period of time, and not only for me, but I really think that if you looked over the course of the history of the X-Men, the 80s and right now, the mid-80s through the end of the 80s, maybe the early 90s, that's when X-Men just took over the world. Yeah. And things like Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, like the Magic miniseries that I mentioned, those are some of the reasons why, as well as the main book itself, which at the time, believe it or not, was only this many. There was one main book.
Uncanny X-Men, yep.
You had New Mutants. That was, even then it was loosely affiliated. It wasn't this, to get the whole story, you have to read one issue and then the other issue crossover crap like they do now. No, it was, you knew if you had read either, you knew that the other existed, but it wasn't, you had to read it to understand. It was like, oh yeah, it's related and it's out there, but okay. Alpha Flight, the same way. Wolverine is the main connection to Alpha Flight.
Doc Strange says, glad to finally get to be here. Just finished a recording.
Cool.
This
And
is Billy, right?
yes, sorry, Billy. We're not doing Superman this time. I'm not sure if you have read. I would say that you probably read Kitty Pryde and Wolverine back in the day. But if you didn't, stand by
Here's your
because we're going to
chance.
tell you all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the golden age. This was in the midst of my comic golden age.
Well, it's interesting that you put it in a block of 10 as well, because 1984 was when I started really officially reading comics.
Okay.
And so if we go 84 to 94, because I have stuff like this, Alpha Flight, all the stuff that you mentioned, but then we jump up to the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider in 1990. That's
okay.
one of my
if,
faves.
If that's your golden age, man, your freaking golden age took in Image when it started.
Right.
That
exactly.
Is
exactly.
wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And but the first G.I. Joe comic I ever bought, issue number 25, 1984.
Okay.
I read Secret Wars at the time. This here, Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, it's funny because I was basically at this point until I started, until my parents allowed me and my little brother to get 2 Marvel subscriptions. I was reading what my brother would let me read. He would go and get his books and he'd let me read stuff. So at one point I had fallen in love with this character, Wolverine, specifically from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Okay.
He was in an episode. He had a small part in the episode. He had an Australian accent for some reason, but he goes up to, I think it was Firestorm. There's a bowl of fruit in front of him. And he goes, "Hey, you want some fruit?" Something like that. And one of his claws comes out and spears an apple. And I just went, that is the coolest superhero I have ever seen in my entire life. And then at one point, my brother said, "Hey, you kind of dug that Wolverine guy, right?" And I said, "Yeah, he's cool." And David was like, "Well, there's a new comic coming out called Kitty Pryde and Wolverine. You should get it. Do you want me to get it for you?" And I was like, "Hell yes."
Okay.
And this is not only my Kitty Pryde introduction, this is my Wolverine introduction in comic books.
Cool.
And it's funny because it's, I think we're going to gush over a lot of this stuff, and a lot of it is going to come from just nostalgic feelings.
Yep.
And there's a part of me that every once in a while, as I'm reading these, I'm going, what would I have thought about this now? And I try to kick that out of my head because I can't, there's no way for me to imagine that. The nostalgia's too deep. However, we'll talk about this probably when we get into it. The one thing that I will take away from this particular issue that I don't think would have, it wouldn't have gone very far in this day and age is that Wolverine doesn't show up in the issue. Logan is in maybe 2 panels, but he's not in costume.
Yeah.
So Kitty Pryde and Wolverine's not even in the first issue. There's no claws. There's none of that.
Yep.
And really, apart from the few times that Kitty Pryde phases in and out of stuff, there's not really any superhero action in this issue either. And
a lot of setup.
Yeah. I finished this issue, and because we both said, we both read it back in the day when it was coming out. I read it again a few years back, and then this is probably my 3rd time reading it. And I got to the end of it this time and just went, wait a minute, this would not happen today. Nobody would people would be on the internet just eating this comic alive, and the creators, wow. You got Wolverine on the cover. Why are they not in the book?
Anybody that knows Chris Claremont would not be upset with the way that this started. No. So you would have those people that would be going off and say I was a Claremont fan for a period of time. I would be dismissing those people because I would know that this is the way Chris Claremont writes. And if you're complaining, you obviously don't know that. So go away, noob. Just go, form your own noob group and complain there on your Discord or your Reddit page or whatever. This is Chris Claremont at his thing. This is what Chris Claremont does.
Yep. A lot of words.
Oh yeah,
a lot of words.
But,
well,
because comic books are for pros. They're not a visual medium. It's a prose outlet.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. All right. Anything else you want to say about it before?
No.
All right. Well, then take us through it, dude.
All right, the first page of the story is a splash page, which is a little different. You get an excellent example of what the art is going to be like for the rest of the book. Definitely, you don't necessarily know, but it turns out for the rest of the series. So, this is Kitty Pryde that we see here, and we actually right off the bat we have an example that she can do something kind of funky because it looks like she's walking out of that tree. Which she's not walking out of it. She has phased all the way through it as she's walking. So that's her power. Kitty was introduced into the X-Men probably a couple years before this. Actually, at the same time that Dazzler was introduced into the X universe. Dazzler, I don't know why or whatever. I'm sure there's stories out there. Was a part of the story and then just moved to the side, whereas Kitty was a part of the story and was taken in with the group and has been with the group up until you can read current X books. There's 2 X books coming out of the Age of Revelation, and I'm not sure if Kitty's in either one of those yet, but she was in the X books before this latest storyline, Age of Revelation. She had her own book with Emma Frost where they were leading and teaching a group of mutants, kind of like Professor X did for her. So, coming out of Age of Revelation, I'm not sure what Kitty's place is going to be. So she's still around. Go ahead.
Well, the issue that she first appears in, the one with Dazzler, I read that over the last couple of years. And the one thing that, if I'm thinking of the same issue, because it's like the X-Men, Scott, Cyclops, and Jean, I think they go to check out the Dazzler situation. Whereas Colossus and Wolverine, maybe a couple others, go to Chicago or wherever to check out Nightcrawler to check in on this Kitty Pryde situation. I just seem to remember a panel where Wolverine or Logan, he's not in costume, they're in like a convenience store and he's leaning against a magazine rack, and I think he's reading a Playboy.
Mm-hmm. He's reading an adult title of something,
exactly.
And I think he gets called out by the owner or the worker that, hey, we're not a library or something like that. And either he says something or he gives them the claw off or so. The whole, That's,
but that was John Byrne, Chris Claremont, X-Men, still fairly early in their partnership. Mm-hmm. But good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, Kitty is here. She's apparently been doing that most Canadian of all Canadian things, but she's not in Canada. Ice skating on some small piece of water out in the country. Apparently, that's a rite of passage if you're Canadian. Everybody that I know of, Canadian, either real people or celebrities or what have you, they've done this. And then being a hockey fan, apparently you cannot play hockey in later in life if you didn't start playing in the ponds and lakes and whatever of Canada if you're Canadian. So that apparently that's where all hockey starts for them.
And this is Deerfield, Illinois.
Yes.
So outside Chicago. So Chicago, I think, is kind of a hockey town.
Yes. And I lived in Illinois until I was 7 years old. And I remember that the winters could get pretty nasty, but I don't necessarily remember that they got nasty enough long enough that you could truly do this. Maybe you can. I'm not saying. Yeah. But as a child, I don't remember this. Now, I lived in Chicago, so,
this could be north of Chicago, so the farther north you go.
It's out a little bit. It's not to find bodies of water that freeze. It's certainly not going to be one of the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan, which is what Chicago's on. So anyway, she's been, and you can tell by her gear, she's kind of dressed for that, to have been outside ice skating. Mentions some things, mentions that she's an X-Man. So if you just picked up the book and you didn't know that, there's a connector there. Peter Rasputin, Colossus, there's a connection. She speaks to one of the X-Men at the time. She kind of had a thing for him. This reference here, last week he gave it back. She gave him her heart and he gave it back. Actually, that is only part of the story in X-Men 182, because what actually happened is detailed in the Secret Wars miniseries that I spoke of at the top of the show.
Yeah.
That is where Colossus met Saji. Don't ask me why.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why I remember that, but it's written down in there somewhere. She was a healer. She helped him out overcome some wounds, and apparently that's all it took for Colossus just to puppy dog all about her.
Yeah.
Even though he had Kitty over here in his real world, because that was the whole part of that story was that a bunch of heroes and villains were taken somewhere else, and so they're separated. Actually, what happened is they disappeared. At the end of one issue of the books that they were involved in, all the characters disappeared. At the beginning of the next book, they reappeared. So that's only a month apart.
Yeah.
But to get that story of where they went, the editor's notes always told you to either see the upcoming or read Secret Wars, and it was a 12 issue. So you had to, they were gone for a month, but they weren't. They were gone in between months. But to find the story, you had to read a whole year's worth of books to fill in that one gap between issue A and then issue B, the next issue. So that was the kind of unique setup. The
the two examples I always throw out for that is there's an issue. So there's an issue of Fantastic Four. I think at the end of the issue is when three of them, the Thing, Human Torch, and Mr. Fantastic disappear.
Right.
Then there is an issue where basically Sue is alone.
Okay.
She's pregnant, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of that issue, they come back, but they have She-Hulk with them.
Yes.
And she's now a member of the Fantastic Four. And you're like, when did that happen? And so, you've got to go and then they did the Spider-Man where he leaves one issue with his red and blue costume.
Yes,
comes back the next issue and he is in his black costume.
That's the biggie. There is the alien black costume.
But I wanted to point out here, maybe some folks need to fact check me, but I looked this up when we got to this bit here on the splash where they take us down to the editor's note and tell us this happened in X-Men 182. I have a bunch of the Masterworks that I got a long time ago through Comixology. So I went and I looked at 182. It doesn't happen in 182. It happens in 183. Matter of fact, I think it's the opening of 183 with Kitty and Peter sitting on a cliffside or something.
Yes,
and
talking. He's telling her about, he's letting her down.
He's not doing it very well. He's hopeless.
No. And I mean, Storm ends up bitching at him about it.
Yeah.
Wolverine definitely here in another issue or two bitches at him about it hardcore. So that's...
Let me ask you this, because you have more of a X-Men history than I do. One of the things, just to talk about this series as a whole real quick, one of the things that comes out of this is, of course, the relationship between Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, kind of a big brother, little sister type of thing, or maybe uncle, niece type of, it's not a romantic relationship. It's but we see something like that later, like in the 90s with Wolverine and Jubilee.
Yes.
And I'm curious, is this with Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, is this is like the first time we've really ever seen Wolverine in this type of capacity. So that kind of sets that up for Wolverine. Because I know she makes reference at one point, even in this issue, that the first time she met Wolverine, he scared the shit out of her.
Yep. It was even the case of somebody like, who was it? Angel. Even left the X-Men because of how Wolverine made him feel. He felt that Wolverine was such a loose cannon that he's like, no, I don't want a part of this now. Good luck. See ya. And that's Angel, not Apocalypse's Man of War, Angel Metal. This is, Angel like he looked in the movie, even though that was a different kid, but that's, so Kitty is, she's been skating here in town. We find out Deerfield, Illinois, which you mentioned, that's her hometown. That's where she was born and raised, as far as we know. And so she's run into some things. She was living in Upper New York. That's where the X-Men are based. Some things happened with Colossus, but also otherwise. And so she's kind of taken a break. She's gone back home, trying to reconnect. I think ultimately really what she's trying to do, she's trying to ground herself. She's 13, 14, 15-year-old, as we've been going through her story in the X-Men. She's a child, but yet she's gone major earth-ending bad guys and evil demons and off-Earth, and I mean all of these consciousness-expanding kind of things for a middle schooler. I mean, those of us that are parents, I mean, think about our kids in middle school.
Right.
Well, that's when Kitty Pryde is doing all this stuff, and having this weird power that brings her to everybody's attention, and so she's gone back home trying to recenter. Deerfield, we find out that her mom and dad are separated, which she always took very personally because it happened story time right about the time that she became an X-Man. So she's always felt that was one of the triggers or one of or the last straw or whatever in her parents' relationship, and not as if being an X-Men wasn't a big enough change in her life. Well, now her parents are divorced. On top of that, at the same time. So
yeah.
So here in this story, her mom's not in the picture. She's off doing Mrs. Kitty Pryde things, but her dad is. So her dad is here at Deerfield. She's home, so she's trying to reconnect with dad, go into his place of business, which is a bank. And in the story, we find out it's a bank that the family has owned, kind of like the bank in the movie where angels get their wings when a bell rings. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yep.
I imagine that kind of bank established, in the early 1900s by a family, and dad and son and dad and son and dad and son have always just stayed the president of the bank. So she's going to visit her dad, and she notices, dude, there's a big limousine here. In Deerfield, Illinois, this must be a pretty important person. And they're in the bank talking to my dad. So she goes up and she's going to talk to him and wanks on the door there. And it's like, oh, it's locked. Well, and she looks at the hours and she's like, well, crap, I forgot that this is when the bank closes. I was, playing ice skating for so long, I lost track of time. She's like, yeah, but that's okay. Let me check some things out here. She looks around a little bit and she slides through the door because that's her power. She can phase. She can, scientifically, she can expand the molecules in her body to the extent that the molecules of her body are able to pass through the molecules of another body, another set of molecules. And that's how she phases. Over the years, it's been used a host of different ways. She can extend it to things like you can see right here. She's carrying all her clothes. She's carrying her ice skates, a scarf. Those are external. You might think, well, yeah, if it's touching her skin, she could control it. That makes sense. Kind of like Spider-Man can still climb walls even though he has gloves on. How does that? Yeah. Okay. So here you can see already she can extend the power to other things that are in close proximity to her. Down the road, she's able to do it with people. She can grasp somebody's hand or get somebody to hold on to her, and she's able to do it with, I've seen 3, 4, 5 people just by force of concentration. So she phases in.
One of the things I dig about comics at this time, by the time you're done with this issue, you know everything you need to know. You know what her powers are. You don't you don't need, if you want to go back and read all the X-Men books, starting with the one that she's, started in, it's going to enhance the experience.
Right.
But from personal experience, having read this is my first X-related title other than Secret Wars.
Right.
Because, I guess I did have Wolverine and Secret Wars. But anyway, that's what I dug about these comics is that by the time, hell, just within the splash page, almost everything you need to know.
Right.
You don't get a full explanation, quote unquote explanation of her powers until, we talked about her phasing. Then they'll talk about the way she kind of floats. They'll talk about that a little later in the issue, but yeah, good stuff.
So she phases inside. She checked outside, which it's funny to me or not funny. It's interesting to me. Here we see her. She phases in backwards, as you can see in the panel here. Nowadays, what she would do is she would phase and stick her head through the wall and look around and then walk through. That's how she would typically do something like this nowadays. Looking outside, make sure the coast is clear. Let me phase in and look around to make sure it's clear inside. She didn't do that. In essence, she just walked inside. Fortunately, she walked behind the security guard and not in front of him. And just, spoke to him, waving it off like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to see my dad. See ya. And
Yeah, because they know each other.
Dude is tripping. He's like, what? I know I locked that door. What the hell's going on? Humor, a little bit of humor.
Yeah,
She goes on to see her dad. We see that her dad's name is Carmen. He's got the president's tag here on the door. Spent a lot of time on this door, I thought, with all the piping and everything, and then the plaque, and so.
See, that doesn't bother me too much because otherwise, I mean, it gives you, I guess, more to look at in the panel. Yeah. Could it, if it was just your plain brown door, it might almost have been just a little bit too. It's not too over the top, and it's not boring. So yeah.
No. So she goes up to the door, and just as she's about to enter, she stops because she can hear people inside talking. And she hears things like extremely awkward position. I've already explained. Our proposition is most reasonable. I won't do it. Consider the alternative. You can't force me. And then the telling sound of flesh on flesh, slap. You can't force me, slap. And she cries out. And I guess I would, what I know of Kitty even at this time, she would have just phased right in when she heard her dad being assaulted, which is what she assumes is going on. But before she can even do that, the door is opened, and this big sumo dude with a top knot stops her. A little bit of back and forth. She wants to see her dad. My impression is that she probably brushed by him. The way that it's drawn, he had kind of stepped aside, but nothing in their conversation happened that would motivate him to step aside. He doesn't know that it's okay to let her in. So I imagine that she just brushed past him.
He's asking, shall I remove her? And the other guy
he's
says,
already let her in.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, all of this would have gone on up here when he's blocking the door. I mean, so she goes into her dad's office, and we see, 5 men. One is her dad. And the other 4 dudes, we can assume, must have been who, at the very least, some number of them, if not all of them, must have come in the limo that she passed outside. So they're the big sumo, and it's not necessarily fair to describe him as sumo other than the fact that I know the story and what's going to happen. I mean, when you first see him, you're not going to assume that he's a sumo. It's going to stand out that he's got a top knot. And
he's big.
Every time I say top knot, I keep trying to think of what that is called in Japanese, but I can't remember. But he's dressed in a 3-piece suit, so there's nothing about him really that says sumo. He's big, 3-piece suit. For that matter, you look at somebody like Wilson Fisk, the character. He's a sumo wrestler. He's a martial artist. Sumo is the art that he practices. Most people have no idea. They just think he's a big overweight dude, and it's like, well, yeah, he's overweight, but it's a controlled overweight. And this is why. I don't know that he still, in Marvel continuity, practices sumo, but originally that's why he was big the way he was, because he was a sumo wrestler.
There you go, folks. That's what it's all about. The Comic Book Super Show. New episodes drop the 4th Monday of each month, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now. We want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Comic Book Super Show. Questions and comments can be directed to the Comic Book Super Show at somanypodcasts.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can help to boost our presence online by leaving a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. I also invite you to join our subscription program, Stephen or Else Beyond. And in return, you'll get episodes of the Comic Book Super Show early and ad-free. Check out the link in the show notes, or just go to beyond.stephenorelse.com to sign up today. The Comic Book Super Show is a presentation of Stephen or Else Media. For more nerdy content just like this, check out somanypodcasts.com. All links will be in the show notes.
I just don't think I can move through life knowing that a guy named Steven did this to me.
How could you let this happen, Steven?
Steven! Thank God. I had a horrible feeling I was going to be the only one here.
Want a piece of fruit?
Am I Team Edward? Yes.